So I learned a lot today about various things that are written on the sheet you get when you go to the realtor's office and are searching for an apartment. And so I just want to document those things, save them for the future so that they can be helpful to someone else potentially. So, not just about this sheet, just like about lots of things. Biggest thing I probably learned today, like the biggest shocker, was this part, the keiyaku nensu, right here. So usually that says like 2 years, and obviously that means like when you go in and you sign, you're signing for a contract period of 2 years. And then depending on the place, the kanri gaisha, whatever, the management company, your landlord, like what happens after those 2 years are up, if you want to stay there, if you want to move out, it's dependent on them, as well as what happens when you move out or like, break your lease, as we would say in English, and you choose to move out earlier than the 2 years. So there's this thing in Japan called kayaku-hi, which is a fee that you have to pay for breaking your contract. And so in the terms like of a lease, in my experience, like what I had heard or knew was that if you moved out earlier than those 2 years that you signed for, then you'd have to pay kayaku-hi. So you'd have to pay an extra fee for moving out earlier than you originally like indicated on your lease or whatever. So in my head, I thought I had to look for apartments that allowed month-to-month leasing, which means that when you're looking like on these sheets and stuff, it doesn't say like keiyaku nensu, like 2 years. It'll say like 1 month possible, or like not 1 month, but like month-to-month possible, or like 1 year, but it won't have that like 2 year written. And so because I'm supposed to graduate in a year, I was like kind of afraid of signing another 2 year lease because I didn't want to have to pay extra money in case I ended up going home next year and not staying for 2 years. But Tsushima-san told me today, he was like, oh, that's not what that 2 years means. Like, it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to move out in under 2 years or else you pay a penalty fee. He's like, what that means is that's actually a benefit for you as the tenant. That means that the landlord, whoever, isn't allowed to force you to move out until after your 2 year contract period. So it's actually like a benefit to the person moving in. So that's a reason why apparently, so the shinsa or whatever sort of examination or test they're putting the tenants through to decide whether or not to allow you to live there. As I mentioned in a previous video, for foreigners, we have a lot more going on for this test. But obviously they're like vetting all potential tenants, right? So one of the reasons why they vet so thoroughly is because of this like 2 year or this whatever, this contract period. Because if they get stuck with a tenant who's like ends up causing them problems and they want them to leave earlier, they can't. So the tenant has the power here. So basically the like contract period, the 2 years means you have the right to live in that apartment for 2 years. The landlord does not have the right to kick you out during that time period. So that's what it means. Usually the issue comes when I was talking about kayaku, and I was thinking that if you stayed less than 2 years and you moved out earlier than 2 years, then you had to pay the kayaku-hi, the fee for breaking your lease. Tsushima-san was telling me that kayaku-hi, that fee, usually comes into play when people try to move out within 1 year. So as long as you stay longer than a year, the kayaku-hi like usually isn't an issue, as long as you move, like you notify your landlord of your intent to move out within the period that they tell you that you need to alert them in advance. I said that very confusingly. So, an example, in my case, my apartment, in the contract, in the lease, it's written that if I want to move out, I have to notify the company, whatever, my landlord, at least 1 month in advance that I'm moving. I can't just like be like, oh, I want to move out next week, and then tell them and then just be out by next week. Like that, in that case, I would have to pay the kayakuhi because I broke my lease, whatever. Like 1 month is like really nice. I think that's the smallest period you can get. Typically, for a lot of other places, it's like 2 months in advance. You have to notify them that you want to move out. So that would suck because it's so hard to find a place. And the way they go like this and you can't even see them, like I would hate to be on a lease where they said notify us 2 months in advance or moving out and then I can't find a house. Anyways, to sum it up again, this fee for breaking your contract should only come into play unless it's stated in your lease explicitly that like you cannot move out within 2 years, which that's usually not the case. But if that's stated, that's your issue. But if it's not, the only time the kayakuhi comes into play is one, if you try to move out within 1 year, like before you've lived there for 1 year. No landlord likes that. So if you stayed a year, the only other reason you would have to be charged kayakuhi for moving out in under 2 years is because you didn't alert your landlord within the time they told you to alert them that you were going to move out. So you didn't give them the month's notice or the 2 months notice that they told you in the contract you needed to give them. Only in those two cases will you have to pay kayakuhi. Otherwise, that 2 year contract period just means you have the right to live in this apartment for 2 years, and that's it. Which is awesome news. Like, I was sitting here thinking the 2 years written there was a penalty, but it's not. It's actually good for me. And this is extremely good for me in my case because I'm going to have a very unstable sounds bad, fuante period next year when I graduate, because I'm gonna have to figure out which visa I am switching to. I'm gonna have to also get it done. I'm gonna have to show a lot of documents. I'm gonna have to do a lot of things in order to get this visa transferred, whatever the process, done fully, and it will take months. And so I don't want to be, first off, me choosing to move during that period would be very bad. This is another thing I learned. So while I'm a student, while you're a student, whatever, landlords, management companies, they look at that as being like a fact of stability for you, right? We don't have to show income sheets, whatever he was telling me about, like nenshu, oh, I guess your annual, I don't know. When you become like an actual employed member of society in Japan, you have to show your like income sheets, whatever, probably during this process, to the landlords and management companies, and they use that to decide whether or not they'll hire you. Like, is your income stable? Has it been stable for like whatever period of time? But if you're a student, like, we don't have to do that. And I feel like maybe mech scholars also, we probably have some extra like clout here because our income is like guaranteed until graduation by the Japanese government. So like they don't have to worry at all about, forfeiting whatever. So we're like locked in terms of income if they find out that we're particularly mech students. Although I've never heard them on the phone tell a management company that I'm a Monbu Kagakusho or like Kokuhi Ryugakusei. They just like mention the fact that I'm Ryugakusei. They'll say the university I go to, and sometimes I'll hear them mention like the fact that I'm in the grad school of medicine, my grad school. I've never heard them say mexed. So either one, they like don't look at that, or two, they discuss that afterward, like after I've submitted my documents, and then the management company gets to know everything they need to know about me. So it could just be too early. So yeah, moving while I still have enough time left on my visa, so my Zairyu Kado or my resident card is like very important. So currently I have a period of maybe like 15 months left because it's February. So to have a whole academic year left, that's from April to March. So I have an extra month and a half. And then after you graduate, you get like 2 months. I don't think it's as much as 3, but like 2 months before your Zairyu card actually like expires. And so I've got a period of maybe 15 months left. So moving now, like I don't look like a risk to the landlords because, I'm a student with a whole year left. So I'll live there for at least a year. But if I were to try to move next year, so that would be maybe February, March, April, I would have less than 6 months left on my residence card. And that would be like, that is like, you can't, no one is going to try to accept you as a potential tenant. No one will offer you a apartment. And so I realized today, because earlier this week I was like, oh, maybe I just won't move because I haven't found a place that I like really love, that really fits what I want. But if I didn't move this year, then I would kind of be locked into my apartment for the next 2 years, because next year during moving season, I will be like considered unstable in the eyes of all of the landlords, and I won't be a good potential tenant, so no one will accept me. He said I won't pass the shinsa. So whatever they're doing to decide, you know, the management companies who's fit, like I don't pass any of those tests because my residence card is like ending. So my student visa is ending. And he said in order to like be acceptable as a potential tenant during that period, it's not impossible, but it's difficult for like some reasons. So in order to become like, you know, a potential tenant again, I would need to show them like the documents for my new job. So obviously I'd be trying to switch to a work visa, right? And so usually you do shukatsu, you find a company that's willing to sponsor your visa. And even before you graduate, you get this thing called an entry sheet, I think is what he called it. And the entry sheet is a statement from your new potential company saying that they will hire you like when you've graduated. It's like locked in. After you're set with this company, you get an entry sheet, and that's their like promise to hire you. So if next year I can show them an entry sheet even though my residence card is expiring in 3 months, they would accept me and like I could still get a new apartment. But without the entry sheet, the landlords don't know that I have any income that's going to come in soon, and they have no way of judging, so they would just reject me. So for me, I'm like especially a liability because I don't actually plan at this point to continue with shukatsu, and I'm not certain, or I'm pretty I don't see myself getting a work visa. Let's just put it at that. After I graduate, I'm looking at lots of different other visa options, and they are less stable than the work visa. So I'm especially unstable situation next year. So for me, it's either like move now this year or like potentially have to wait 2 years to move. And I'm not trying to do all that. So yeah, I'd been thinking maybe I could just move next year, but now I see that that is a very, very slim. I don't even want to say slim. It's extremely unlikely I'll be able to move next year. So I need to find a place in the next 2 weeks, basically. So that's what I learned about that. Basically the contract period, and then moving as a student who's like close to graduating. That's kind of how the situation is for you. So in terms of more specific stuff on the sheet, because those were really big like concepts to cover, I learned a lot of really interesting things. So if you see this, I don't know how to read this kanji, and it doesn't look like it's gonna focus. So I'm just gonna tell you what the kanji are since I can't read it. It's like karui, K and keizai, ryo and as in like omoi, and then tetsu, hone, and then so as in like skuru. So I can't read that, but it's telling you the kozo, so like how the building structure, how it's made. And Tsushima-san told me this is a tokuni yowai no. So if I were to move into a place that's made with this structure, it would probably be very like perceptive to like noise, which would absolutely drive me up the wall. I do not want to live there. The strongest, when I talked to Koutani Homes, he told me that what's called tekkin concreto. Tekkin, this one, I know you can't read. Tekkin concreto is like the standard strongest material like throughout most of Japan. There's actually one more structure or like framework that is stronger, and I don't remember the name. So tekkin concreto is reinforced concrete, and there's one level above in terms of strength, and they particularly use it in Tokyo because it's stronger against earthquakes. So he said in terms of like noise or like sound permeation, like the level above reinforced concrete like it doesn't have such an effect on like noise permeability. It's literally just structurally stronger so that the buildings are more likely to withstand earthquakes. So if you see tekkin concreto, sometimes they write it that, sometimes they write it RC. Just know that that is the most noise resistant type of building that you can get in Kyoto. And apparently my building is tekkin concreto, but like I be hearing the lady next door, like her television, and she's like maybe 80 years old, so she doesn't even make so much noise, but the fact I hear her television, like, can you imagine if she was me? I'd be like filming YouTube videos next to this wall. I'm certain she can hear me. So yeah, it's way better than my last apartment, which was just like awful. Like I would have literally gone insane with that level of noise, but like obviously it's still not great. So if I lived on a lower floor, I'm sure I'd be able to hear my upstairs neighbors. So reinforced concrete is the strongest and the least noise resistant, but it's still Japan. It's still quite noisy. So I learned that, and whatever this Keiryo Tetsuonso is a Yowai version, and then the weakest version is Ki, so wood. The building's made of wood, and they will be probably the noisiest place you've ever lived. So definitely avoid at all cost. What else did I learn? Okay, I learned some stuff about the building structure. So when you see this part, so in this example, it says sankai, like tate. I'm not reading them right. My kanji ability is low. And then it has a dash and says sankai bubun. So what that means, well, in this case, it's not too helpful, but that means out of like a 3-story building, like this room is on the 3rd floor, is what it's saying. A more helpful example, so the one I just showed you, this one, in this case, it says rokai, like tate, whatever, and then yonkai bubun. So that means out of a 6-story building, like this room is on the 4th floor. So I didn't understand that because I was like, what is yonkai bubun? Like, I literally couldn't understand like 4th floor portion. I guess it makes sense when you try to translate it literally, but like the sense wasn't making, so I didn't get it. But that's what that means. So sometimes the numbers, like the room numbers, differ from the actual floor of the building. So in the first example I've showed you where it says sankai bubun, this room is called 2B. So when I looked at it initially, I was like, oh, it's on the 2nd floor. But then if you like go and read that, it's like, no, you're actually on the 3rd floor of the building. So that is what that means. And then next to it, they tell you how many rooms are in the whole building. So in this one, there's 16. So up to 16, I guess like different tenants can live there. Okay, other things that I learned that were cool and interesting. So system kitchen. Finally learned what that means. System kitchen basically means that the stove is built into the kitchen structure. So typically apartments, all the apartments I've ever lived in besides the dorm, because I didn't have a full kitchen, we have our like stoves, like the konro and the fish grill. It's like a little black box, and we literally like buy them and you carry them from one apartment to the next. Like that is your stove. That's how the thing you connect to the gas to be able to cook food, unless you have an electric one or an IH one. And so what a system kitchen means is that you don't need to bring your own burner anymore. The burner is finally like a part of the apartment. It's like provided, and it's one structure with the kitchen. I'll like have to show you a picture. But yeah, I had no idea what system kitchen meant for like all these years, but that is it. So system kitchen is usually a characteristic of the nicer apartments. Like I said, I have yet to stay in a place that is system kitchen, but all of my options that I'm looking at right now are system kitchen, and so the rent for those are all above like Kyumang, and I've only stayed in places where the rent is up to Rokumang. So yeah, that is a difference of the nicer apartments. What else did we learn? For internet though, sometimes like if they don't just have, okay, they'll either have these little words that I like can't even read because they're too small, or it will have like a dash. I don't have an example of the dash right now, but when you see a dash, it looks like this. So either you get marus, which means like we have this, or dash, which means we don't have this. And internet has these words. When you see the words, it means dash. It means internet is not free. You have to make your own, contract your own internet and pay it monthly. That's the expensive version. Internet is very expensive. It's around gosen a month, so 5,000 yen. And like, that's as cheap as it gets. It's really unfortunate. So one of the places I found today on this sheet where I got it with Tsushima-san, it like had the words, so we were like, okay, the internet's not free. But when he printed out the sheet for me today, like for moving in, for some reason this room does have free internet. So you can see, you can't read it, but the internet is free. And then you just have to pay a 5,000 yen fee in the very beginning for them to set it up, and then it's free. So that's crazy because, once again, that information differed from the sheet I got originally, but like, for some reason, they got a lot going on. Like, nothing is perfect on the sheet you get. So, what else have we learned? Also, okay, so elevator, they be playing games. In one of the places I looked at today, like, elevator, I can't show you, it's not this one. Elevator had a maru, right? So it's saying this building has an elevator. We go there, and literally, so the building has an elevator, but the elevator only goes to half of the rooms because the building is separated like east and west. And so the room we went to see for me was on the west side, and there's like a big wall that separates like the east and the west side, and the elevator's on the east side. So only if your room's on the east side can use the elevator. So we had to take the stairs to my room because there's literally no elevator. But the sheet said elevator maru. So I was upset. I didn't like that. I felt lied to and betrayed. So be careful, y'all. You gotta go see your rooms. You gotta go see them because these sheets, like, yeah, they got a lot of information, but so much is wrong, or like wrong. So much can be different. Like, it's crazy. So moving on, churinjo. So you'll see like often, not often, you'll see like chushajo and then churinjo. Chushajo is for parking cars and churinjo is for parking bikes. So if you got a bike, it's important, and that's important to you. You don't want to leave it on the street out in the rain. Make sure that it has like the little ari kanji. Okay, I feel like that was most of the things. Actually, I feel like it wasn't. Like, I literally learned so much, and I felt like I only gave you half of it. So much information. Let's see if there's anything else I can find real quick. Something else, okay, I learned, moving companies. So moving season is obviously, well, moving season is March. And so if you can move a little bit like zureteru, like from that date, a little bit outside of March, the moving company prices will like apparently be a lot cheaper or significantly cheaper. So if you move in March, literally all of Kyoto is moving in March. So the moving companies, like, it's their season, so their prices are like, you know, really high. But there's a room that we were looking at, and he's like, you might be able to move like maybe second week of April, and if you could wait till after maybe like April 10th, the moving prices will be like much cheaper. So like, I recommend for you to try to move like mid-April, April 10th to 15th, instead of like end of March, very early April. So pro tip, if possible, it's likely not possible because when you gotta move, you gotta move. But yeah, I learned that about the moving company prices. Oh, very important thing I haven't mentioned yet at all. Bunjo mansion. So there's a type of mansion. Oh my gosh, I haven't mentioned that either. So mansion and apato are two different like types of building. I don't know where I wrote it. Oh, I wrote it here. So apato is like the normal thing you live in, right? You've got a bunch of rooms, a management company rents them all out, you fill it up, you move out, everyone's doing their own different thing, right? Bunjo mansion, Tsushima-san translated it to the English word condominium, but you know, we can't trust katakana go, so I'm not really sure if that's what it means in English. But Bunjo Mansion means that each room is like managed by its own company or landlord, its own management company. And so each room is rented out like by one person, and not just rented, you can buy these rooms. So typically when you buy them and people don't ever move out, like that apartment room becomes their home, and that's managed by one landlord. So each room is like, you know, managed very differently. And usually, like, especially Ryugakusei international students, we don't get like to stay in Bunjo Mansion because they're like much stricter, I guess, for like obvious reasons. And so we don't like meet their caliber of tenant, especially because we can't afford to buy rooms. So I didn't know that Bunjo Mansion. So I had just learned about Bunjo Mansion when I went to see the rooms with Kotani Home. So this was like 2 weeks ago. I just learned about this word, and he told me, oh yeah, you buy the room. So he was like, you need 7,000 man. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, no. And so today was Tsushima-san. He was like, or not today, whatever. This room that he found me, like, is being rented, even though it's a Bunjo Mansion. So it's a condominium, and most people have bought their rooms. This room in particular is going for rent, which is very interesting. And I've passed their preliminary shinsa. They were like, yeah, you can show it to your grad school of medicine, Kyodai foreign student. Go ahead. So I was really shocked. Y'all, the quality difference between Bunjo Mansion and Apato is unbelievable. Like, I'm sure there must be Apato, like apartments of good quality in Japan, and I just obviously haven't stayed there yet. But this, y'all, Bunjo Mansion has a lobby. I didn't even think that was possible in this country because all I've seen are the lower tier of living, but like a whole lobby with lights like embedded in the ceiling. So I mean, I'll show you in like a garden, a big old glass back wall, and I was just so impressed. So this room of the condominium is, the rent is 90,000 yen, but there's a 20,000 monthly maintenance fee, so the rent in total would be 110,000 yen every month. So obviously it's still high quality, upper tier. It's very expensive, but it's not like 200,000, right? Like, it's in the range I'm looking at, which is like crazy. Obviously it's on the expensive side, but still, me, like the international student, is like looking at this place and they let me. So yes, that's kind of an introduction to Bunjo Mansion and how they are different from apartments or apato. Next thing I learned from Tsushima-san is, the condominiums, because they're nicer and all the stuff I just told you, they got that going on, they're less likely to be noisy, because I was worried because it's still like tekkin concreto. Oh, this must be the strongest one. I can't read it, but the kanji are tetsu and then hone, and then it says tekkin concreto. So this must be the strong kind they're only using in Tokyo against the earthquakes. So got that going on, great. So noise should be already at a minimum, but because this place is like super high quality, because it's Bunjo Mansion, he said the noise like shouldn't be so much of a problem. And that's just because there's just like a different tier of tenants living here. And so he was like, shouldn't have to worry about noise too much because this room is on the 2nd floor and it's a 6-story building. And as I mentioned before, my current apartment is a top corner room, and I really, really love not having upstairs neighbors and only one side neighbor. So it's going to be hard for me to let go of that. And so if I did, I wanted to be as assuaged as possible, that I won't have to deal with like footsteps above me all day, every day, you know? And so he was like, yeah, noise should be at a minimum just because of this quality of place. But next we talked about bugs because it's on the 2nd floor, and I'll mention after this why that's an issue. But he said, so the quality is better, but it doesn't affect like the bug probability. Like, you know, Japan and their bug issues, we got a thing going on. So 2nd floor still isn't the most safe. So another thing I appreciated about my top floor, 6th floor apartment, 6th floor is very high above the bugs. I don't have so many issues. But it is an issue for me, like literally bugs make it or break it. So usually breaking it. But so that is something I learned. Yeah, the condominiums are nicer in like every way. Tenants are better, just security, got everything going on. But the bugs, they do not differentiate between condominiums and apartos and manshan and haitu, whatever. So that to me was pertinent information. Last thing I wanted to talk about from the myriad of things I learned today was like I had just mentioned, I was like, oh, the difference between like aparto and mansion, and then I like didn't tell you the difference. So aparto is a building that's only up to 2 floors, whereas a mansion are the like residences that are 3 floors or higher. So that's the difference. Mansion are just the taller apartment buildings. And also so these like all these places have different names and stuff, and they're always like super extra to me because they're all katakana and like difficult to read and they don't make any sense to me. So this one is Dafi ne Kita Shirakawa or something. No meaning to me. I feel like they're probably coming from like French most of the time. But if you ever see something that says Haitsu, like Nani Nani Heights, right? But written as Haitsu. Haitsu is equivalent to aparto. They like mean the same thing. So a Haitsu is an aparto, but neither of those are a mansion. And mansion has different types, like Bunjo mansion. So learning about the differences, these names do have meanings. So yeah, let's cut it off there. That's the majority of the little tidbits of information I picked up today that have to do with moving here in Japan, maybe particularly Kyoto, I don't know. But yeah, really interesting stuff. So that's all for now. I will talk about the room tours I did today in a separate video so that this video doesn't have to be an hour long. That's all. See you in the next video. I'll probably link it here, the like apartments that I went to go see today. If it's out, it'll be there. If it's not, it won't. All right. See you later. Mata ne. Bye.